You don't need me to tell you the legalities of emulation, but nobody can deny that old video games became more accessible, more portable, and appear better as our technology evolves. Personally, as much as I see the benefits of emulation, I prefer playing with the actual hardware because it does add more to the gaming experience. Aside of being expensive and space-consuming, another problem of playing actual hardware in these modern times is the video quality that it projects on the modern television screen. Old consoles were not technologically designed to be played on high-definition monitors, but people still found ways around it. The upscalers. Assuming you have the resources, it is still possible to play your old games and consoles on high resolutions with these upscalers can provide. Now, there are already a lot of videos about different upscalers online that talks more about their technicalities in great detail. But this video is more of an introduction and my gaming experience after using these devices. Hello everyone, I am Joe RPG, part of the Timeless Gamer podcast under Pinoy Retro Gaming, and I am about to show you some upscalers and give you my overall thoughts about each one. The first one that I ever got was the XRGB Framemeister, released by Micomsoft in Japan on 2011. It was revolutionary on how we play our old consoles and games on flat-screen TVs. One of the advantages of the Framemeister is the variety of input support. This can handle composite cables, S-Video, DVI, HDMI, and RGB SCART. Apparently, in certain parts of the world like Europe and Japan, SCART cables are being used to connect their multimedia devices to their televisions. SCART can dish out RGB and composite signals which bring out the best visuals of the old games and consoles that can go up to 1080p. For most of the world like North America and Southeast Asia, the best that we had before the late 90s were RF cables, composite cables, and S-Video cables. Sadly, there is no room for the YPBPR component cables in the Framemeister, but there are ways around it. Regardless of what input method you choose, the processed video and audio signals will go into one HDMI out port to connect to the HD TV. Another advantage of the Framemeister is the settings that can be customizable depending on the game console you are using, like changing the input resolution, aspect ratio, and adding scan lines like the old CRT televisions give out. The Framemeister can upscale up to 1080p from the 7th generation of consoles and below. Depending on your HD TV, the lag is almost non-existent. The Framemeister is not cheap, despite the fact that it is no longer in production since 2019. You might be looking now at about $1,000 more or less. But if you are going to look at the upscalers released by Microsoft, this product was arguably the best and the most worth to get. The second disadvantage is the lack of official firmware support. At the time of making this video, the last firmware Microsoft ever released was the unstable beta version of 2.04, which offers better compatibility with 4K televisions. Back in 2019. The cheaper alternative to the Framemeister during its heyday is Kaiko's Upscaler, the open source scan converter, or the OSSC. Cheaper, yes, but with features that the Framemeister does and does not have. And then of course the Chrono Cross problem, but more on that later. The next one is the Retro Analog to Digital 2X, or RAD2X. The Framemeister and OSSC may offer an all-in-one service, but if you are the type of person who only plays on one particular classic console from the 4th and 5th generation, the RAD2X maybe is the one for you. It was a project in collaboration of RetroTink and Retro Gaming Cables, which is just a plug-and-play cable that connects your console to the HD TV. They came up with versions for the classic Sega consoles, classic Nintendo consoles, Neo Geo, PC Engine, PlayStation 1, and PlayStation 2. For most of the classic consoles, their projected RGB video can only go as high as 240p. With the Rad2X, it doubles that to create a digital 480p signal without compromising the gaming experience. The one that I have is the Nintendo variant that supports Super NES, Super Famicom, Nintendo 64, and GameCube. Since the Rad2X is only designed for a particular line of console brand, the price would go around for £60 if you will buy it from the Retro Gaming Cables website. Whichever variant you choose, the Rad2X is region-free. It will internally convert RGB video signals into YPBPR with a smoothing filter that can be turned on and off. And it also has built-in anti-aliasing and line doubling to give you a sharper image. If you are the person that thinks that the pixels are all that matters, this product can only go as high as 480p, so it may bug you knowing that fact. The default aspect ratio is 4:3, which is a bummer to those wanting a wider screen. A personal complaint of mine is that the Rad2X requires you to get a mini HDMI cable, which is sold separately. I don't know if it was a business decision or a crucial design necessity, but it did caught me by surprise that I had to get one of these mini HDMI cables. For the consoles with games that natively project 360p, 480p, and 720p, there is the M Classic. This product was made by Marseille right after their original product, the M Cable. The M Classic is advertised as the world's first add-on plug-and-play graphics processor for video game consoles for $100. As marketed, you just plug the M Classic to the back of your console's HDMI port, plug the external power cable, mini USB, hook the HDMI cable up to the HDTV, and then play. It has 3 modes. Pass-through, meaning there is no video processing. Green, which blows up the video into a 16:9 aspect ratio on 1080p with anti-aliasing, smoothing effects. And then blue, the retro mode, which will shift the image into a 4:3 aspect ratio on 1080p and anti-aliasing. If your HDTV can natively support 1440p, the M Classic can upscale it that high. The M Classic is designed for devices with HDMI ports like Xbox 360, PS3, PSTV, and Switch, for example. If you want to use your older consoles on the M Classic, then you have to use a HDMI adapter compatible to that console. Another issue with the M Classic users is the debate whether the device really does everything that Marseille says for all of the consoles it can support. Some users say they hardly notice any significant changes in their Xbox 360 games, PS2 games, and Switch games. Some users say there are improvements if the games are being run in the lowest default resolution and then letting the M Classic do the upscaling. Some users say the M Classic only added more flickering and noise. Some users think that their devices may be defective because they just don't see any improvements whatsoever. Depending on what console you are playing, the M Classic can be a hit and miss. Personally, I see some improvements with the GameCube, Switch, and PSTV games. RetroTink strikes yet again with the RetroTink 5X. The developer of this product, Mike Chi, has made some continuous improvements with his line of upscalers. If I'm going to describe this device, it is like if the FrameMeister and OSSC had a baby but inheriting some of the best qualities of both. The RetroTink 5X supports input of composite, S-Video, YBPPR component, RGB SCART, and all outputs to HDMI that can upscale and downscale to 240p, 480p, 720p, 1080p, 1200p, and 1440p with very minimal lag. The RetroTink 5X also features 3 kinds of 1080p modes: fill, over, and under. Each works depending on your gaming experience. If you really want to go technical with every pixels, optimal sampling and interpolation are also featured in the settings. Another advantage of the RetroTink 5X is how it solves the Chrono Cross problem. A little bit of backstory here. When I was playing Chrono Cross on my PS1 upscaled by the Framemeister, the screen would go black for about 3 seconds every time I transitioned to the in-game menu and then back to the main gameplay. It turns out there are PS1 games like Chrono Cross, Dino Crisis, and Silent Hill that are clocking at 240p in general, but shifts into 480i at the title or menu screen. For old CRTs, the transition is automatically corrected and barely unnoticeable. The Framemeister unfortunately needs the extra seconds to shift between the two resolutions. The RetroTink 5X handles this transition seamlessly. Other games like the Resident Evil 2 for the N64 and Symphony of the Night for the Sega Saturn also benefit from this. Another advantage of the 5X is that Mike is quite diligent in releasing firmware updates trying to push this hardware as far as possible. At the making of this video, the 5X can upscale now up to 4K 30fps and HDR. But these features are experimental and don't really work as for any kind of games. To be honest, all I have are just nitpicks in regarding the disadvantages that I can live with. First is the SCART port. If you are plugging the SCART cable, then it will look opposite to your component cables. The other thing is the external power cord, which the 5X uses a micro USB. I would have preferred USB Type-C, but I have some micro USB cables laying around, so it is okay. Next is the settings menu with less options compared to the Framemeister, but that is why Mike is updating the firmware all the time. The asking price is something to be less desired as well. Out of all of the upscalers that Mike is offering, the 5X price is $300 US. Cost a bit more than the OSSC, but cheaper by comparison against the Framemeister. As far as streaming goes, the upscalers that I have shown you can be used with capture cards for game streaming, with very minimal to zero lag. For the meantime, I'm using the RetroTink 5X because of the YPBPR component cable support. If you have the consoles and you want to invest on an upscaler, I hope this video is a good start of introducing you to some of the best out there right now, and then watching other videos that explains each one in further detail. If you have the consoles but you don't care what image quality you are getting out of your HD TV, these upscalers are here should you start caring about your gaming experience. If you have the consoles but you can't invest in spending too much of these brands, there are other rudimentary upscalers online, but do your research first. If you don't have the consoles, definitely these upscalers mean nothing to you. Chances are, you have a good gaming PC that you can just run the latest emulation software to automatically upscale the old games. The question now is for you. Do you think it is necessary for you to have these upscalers in playing old consoles and games? Go down in the comments section and let us know your thoughts. This is Joe RPG of the Timeless Gamer podcast under Pinoy Retro Gaming. Thank you for watching.